Time to finish this up. We're going to be using Ammo by Mig's U-Rust system on this build. The first thing I'm going to work on is one of these crazy cats. We're going to use the copper blue patina. This is really thick inside, so you really want to shake it up and make sure everything is good. All I did with the copper blue patina was brush it all over him and then just wipe off the excess. To bring out the oxidation effects, we're going to use the Type 1 and Type 2 activators. First, we're going to use the Type 1 activator. We're just going to start painting it all over the copper blue patina in a random fashion. Now that I'm done with the number 1 activator, I'm using the number 2 activator in open spots, and I'm also going over some of those spots that we used activator number 1. This way it gives it different effects. I let it dry up for about 2 hours, and you can see the effects that are coming out. Some rust, some white oxide, different shades of rust on there too. So the product works very nicely, and I did like this at the beginning, but I do change my mind later on. And now that both crazy cat things are all done up, I got them on top of the pillars. Now that the base coat is all painted up and flat coated, I have the gates in there, and that's the next thing we're going to work on, and we're going to use the U-Rust system on that also. From the U-Rust system, we're going to use the black oxide on the fences. One thing I did notice that the U-Rust system does not play well with acrylic paints for some reason. When I was brushing it on the fences, it was taking off the clear coat, and it was also taking off the black paint, so I had to touch that up. Again, what I'm doing here is I'm taking activator 1 and I'm painting that all over the fences, and once the fences are done and dry, then we're going to go over to activator 2 on top of it to bring out some different effects. And now I'm going to add the activator number 2. You can actually see activator number 1 is actually starting to change color. And here's the gates after all drying up. I really like how the U-Rust system worked. I know some people are very anal about it, but this is a cartoon basically, and the whole things are rusted up. It's not like people are touching it or, weather is on a certain side. I just wanted to look old, grimy, creepy, and rusty. I didn't like the white oxide on those crazy cat things, so I just moved over to plain old rust oxide on the cat. I know brass or gold isn't gonna rust, but I just wanted that to look like rust. And here's the difference between the two of them. So I'm changing them both up to the rusty look. When you go for just the rust look and you're using the rust oxide, only use activator 1 and it'll just look rusty. If you put activator 2 on there, you'll get the white oxide. Next up, we're going to work on the gates that are behind Jack Skellington. We're going to get these all rusty using activator 1. And again, with the U-Rust system, we're going to be using just the rust oxide, and we're going to be using just activator 1. And as a reminder, make sure you really shake this stuff up before putting it on. And we're just going to take it on an old brush, and we're going to start painting and dabbing it all over the place that we want rust. I ended up doing the whole gates, the front, and I just did the bottom section, middle, and then the top. And then I let it all dry, and I moved on to the other gate. Now that the first step is dry, we're going to use activator 1 all over the whole thing, and I'm probably going to work my way from the top down. Paint started coming off again, so I had to do a second coat on here, but all's good in the end. And here's the first gate all done up. You can see all the different textures and colors from the U-Rust system. It really, really makes it look good. Now I have to do this 3 more times. Here's the set of main gates all done up, front and back, and you can see how the product really makes a difference with weathering. It makes it a lot easier to do just because you have to use the one product and then you use the activator, and it gives you just random patterns and random rust looks. And here are the gates put in onto the pillars. They're just press fit in, but you can see the really, really nice rust work that came out from using the product. It's on the back too. I didn't forget the back because you never know who's looking at the back of your model. But if you're interested in trying this product, I would say it's definitely worth it. Now it's time to get the base on the base. Unfortunately, there are some gaps, so I'm going to take the Milliput, fill all that in beforehand, let that dry for 4 hours, and we'll start working on the base. The next step is I'm just taking some folk art brown paint because I don't want to waste good paint, and I'm just painting up the whole base. After I was done painting the brown, the next thing I did was got some dirt from my backyard, cleaned it out, and I spread it all over the base with Elmer's glue to make it stick, and then I let that dry. Once everything was good and dry, I just tipped it over and got off all the excess dirt, even scraped some off. This way we're ready to do some static grass on the base. grass. I decided I didn't like the black lip, so I'm going to put dirt there to make it kind of look like it's underground. And I also taped off the rest of the base. This way we don't get any paint or glue or anything like that on all the hard work we did before. I just did the same method as we did before. I used Elmer's glue around the rim, and then I just started putting dirt on top of there. This way it would fill it all in, and we're trying to make it look like it's below the grass level. Now that the dirt is on here and this is looking much better, it's time for static grass. I'm using the homemade static grass applicator that I've made a long time ago. You can check out the videos on the channel. I'm going to be using Woodland Scenic static grass. I'm going to be using 2 different colors to try to make it look more like a fall atmosphere. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an adhesive, which is basically 50% white glue, 50% water, and some isopropyl alcohol. It's like a scenic cement. This way we'll have something to have the grass to adhere to, because we need glue to make things stick. Now it's time to use the static grass. All I'm doing is using the static grass applicator. I'm putting the little pin down into the ground and then just shaking the heck out of the static grass applicator, only about 2 inches from the base itself. This way it makes the grass stick up and it looks like it's grass. As you can see, the ground is bare again, no grass. I forgot how bad Woodland Scenic's static grass is. I got to get rid of that stuff. So I'm re-gluing everything down. I went through my stash and I found my good static grass. And here I am redoing the grass, and you can see actually how much better this grass is, how it's sticking up, unlike the Woodland Scenics that actually just clumps up. This grass looks so much better. And both sides of the base are done. The grass is looking really good. The next thing I'm going to do is start pulling off the masking. This way I can take a look at it and see how things look. And now it's time to clean up the front. I totally made a mess with all the dirt, and I don't want to ruin anything. I already put enough scratches in the black that I'm going to have to touch up. And now it's time to start working on the electronics of the base. All my wires are dangling, but I did get the LED strip in there nice and solid. And because I can't stand a mess, I wrapped up all the wiring and hot glued it to the base. I popped the bottom of the case on, everything looks good and is all sealed up. And this is actually one of my favorite things of the build, the moon with the logo up front. It came out really, really nice. The only thing I didn't realize on the bottom was when I pushed the bottom of the case in, it leaves that little shadow at the bottom. So it's kind of like the moon coming up over land, but I don't mind. It looks good. And now it's time to get to painting. I'm just using Tamiya flat black. Gonna mix it up right in the pot, add my thinner in there, and then we're gonna spray. Now that I have all the black done, it's time to move over the white for his hands, his head, and his shirt. Now I'm going to start prepping his body because the main thing to do are all the white lines in his jacket and his pants. So what I'm going to do is first clean that dust off him, and then I'm going to seal coat him with Mr. Super Clear Gloss. This way, if I get any acrylic paint outside the lines, I could just wipe it off. I bought these guns and markers to use the white one in hopes of doing the white lines in an easier fashion than by hand brushing. The first marker I used was gray, which had a fine point on it, which got in the lines pretty well, and I'm doing gray first. This way it's easier to go over it with the white. Now it was time to try the white marker. Unfortunately, this white marker has a chunkier tip to it, so it wasn't staying inside the lines, so I had to try something else. Luckily, while I was at Hobby Lobby, I bought a couple other paint markers. I'm going to try those too. Sorry my big head was in the way, but you can see here the paint marker didn't work out the greatest, so I'm going to try one of the thinner ones. This is one of the other paint markers. You can see the gray is better for white to go over, but it's still way too thick, so we're going to have to hand brush this. I decided to start working on the hands first. I just used a black wash in between all of his fingers and then on his mouth. Unfortunately, the mouth, the lines weren't that deep, so it really didn't work that well. And once his mouth was done and his nostrils, I just went in and started blackening in his eyes. And here's a quick look at Jack with his head on. I actually messed up his jacket, so I got to repaint that black because of the white, and we'll get to doing that again. I started painting in the lines on the pants. I used a 20-0 brush to do this because it was pretty thin, but unfortunately it still gets a little wonky in there, so it's a lot of back and forth touching up, putting the white in, touching up the black, and a lot of different patterns on his pants. As you can see here, the pants are all done. This took me actually a couple days because my eyes were going crazy, but we got it all done, a lot of touch-ups, and the next thing is the jacket. And the last thing I did on Jack was his shoes. They were kind of shiny in all the reference pictures, so I just put a satin coat over his shoes. And also used Ammo by MIG Ultra Matte on the pants. Next up was respraying Jack's jacket. I used Silly Putty over the white because I painted the white first and I kind of left the collar covered up more. This way I could just go back in there and touch up the collar and not have to worry about ruining that white again. And then once all this was done, I went back in doing the pinstripes with that 20-0 brush. A lot of touch-ups again, but we'll get there. And here's Jack's coat all done up with all the crazy white lines on it. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's a 20-0 brush. Just go in there. The lines are engraved in here and just do a lot of touch-up and you'll be fine. And I went over that with a matte coat or the Ultra Matte coat by Ammo by MIG. Now it's time to assemble the top half. All I'm doing is putting a little DAP Rapid Fuse where his tie goes, the bat tie. So we're going to pop that on there, hold it for a few seconds, and that'll be good to go. Now to add some DAP Rapid Fuse to the lower half of his body, put those suckers together and his long, lanky legs will be on there, and we'll have a nice tall Jack Skellington. After I was done with his legs, the next thing for me to do was put his hands on there and make sure they stayed in place. These guys are a little bit fragile. And of course, the last thing to do is fill up the little hole with DAP Rapid Fuse, get Jack's head on here, and we'll finally have a completed figure. And here's our tall, skinny friend, all completed up, pinstripes and all. If you do this, I'm telling you, you're gonna get a little frustrated with the pinstripes, but you can do it. And of course, here we go with the final piece of the build, adding the DAP Rapid Fuse into the key on the base. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put Jack in there, hold him in place, and the diorama will finally be completed. And here are the final pictures of this build. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time doing the videos and building this. Look for our next series on Krampus.